Good morning, everybody. We forgot to do the Noam Elimelech last night, but it's not yet Netzachama. We're still before sunrise. Maybe about 15 minutes before sunrise. So let's chaparine right now. Noam Elimelech, this week's Parshas Tzav, right? Let's see what we can do. Vaydaber Tzav es b'nei Yisrael. The Lord spoke unto Moses, speaking to the children of Israel. Here's Rashi. Rashi explains, Tzav ala zirus. The term of command means to cause someone to be, have zrizis, to be diligent, to encourage somebody. V'yoyser tzorech l'zaris makrim sheyesh chesron kis. So the Rashi says that where there's literally, it means, and this is what the Noam Elimelech is going to look at the literal meaning. The literal meaning here is where there's a loss of the pocket, meaning that there's a monetary, financial loss. You have to be very careful not to waste money, especially when we're talking about public funds, communal funds. We have to be very careful. This is a big thing. Since I work on the taxpayer dime, that I have to be very careful not to be lazy, etc. The same thing, the priests in the temple or the tabernacle had to be careful. That's the simple meaning of the idiom. But as is often the Hasidic method, is that we're going to look at the literal meaning of the idiom and see what homily can be made out of that. Nearly. So the Heilige Rebbe Melech says very beautifully, Al Pi Remes, that there's a hint here. The Hinei Adam Ha'ovid is interesting. He doesn't call it drush, he calls it remes, which is a different. Drush would be homily, remes is just a hint. A person worships the blessed Lord, may be blessed. He has to serve God with diligence, uvimidos tovos, and with good character traits. But if a person he worships God with laziness, like he's being forced to do something, he's not willing to do it. It's just, he feels, oh, I got to do this. I mean, he's not excited about it. He's missing his body. It's like he has no body, because his soul is definitely excited to worship God. That's no question. But we're supposed to bring the body into the worship as well, because that's why the soul is brought into the body, in order to encourage, the rectification. It's not like the dualism that we see, particularly in certain ascetic cults, like the old Essenes, and that has found its way into much of Christianity, of saying, that there's something about being an ascetic, practicing abstinence and so forth as a goal. In Judaism, we do have a tradition of abstinence, but the purpose of abstinence is to raise the body, meaning when you fast, when you eat after a fast, you enjoy the food more. When you refrain from sexual intercourse at certain times, it's part of that is that there is an idea of introducing pleasure between a husband and a wife in a sanctified and holy way that's giving and caring and elevated. And there's more satisfaction. I'm not talking in a hedonistic way. I'm talking in a spiritual way that that, and it's interesting because I didn't watch this video, but I get all these recommendations on YouTube. I actually probably should look at this just to criticize it. I think it was a YouTube short of a Christian apologist saying that we have to stop spiritualizing our bodies. And it's so interesting that a religion that believes in the incarnation of the divine into a human body and teaches in their religion that that's what one should emulate, the person who they claim as that, which we of course reject their claims as being anything special, anything more than anybody else, meaning we recognize that God is everywhere and in everything, and that God fills all the universe. The scripture says the whole world is filled with His glory. And so to focus that idea that the glory of God is only in one person instead of in all people, or at least in potential in all people, that's somewhat idolatrous. Meaning the glory of God can be in everyone, in every tzaddik, in every righteous and holy person. And in a certain way, the veneration of saints in some of the traditional Christian churches have ideologically a little bit closer, even though it's still not exactly, but the big mistake of the other religion is that they focus that on one person, but we're all the children of God. You are the children of the Lord your God. And again, not in the theological sense, because that could be interpreted as a type of pantheism. That's not what we believe. But the big mistake of pantheism is not looking beyond this world. God fills all worlds and surrounds all worlds. So anyway, the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is that we are supposed to spiritualize our body. We're supposed to fill our bodies with the Spirit of God, that when we engage in worship, the body should be engaged in worship. And so, now that's a small part of it. That's not the be-all and end-all. And maybe that's a mistake that some people make, is that they become totally hedonistic, but the real idea and the ideal of Judaism is this unity of body and soul. It's not that the body is a wretched thing. The body is a creation of God. It requires rectification because of sin. We agree with that. But the method of rectification, the other religion, they say it's just faith. Well, faith is not a bodily function. In our religion, it is through deeds. It is through actions. Because that is the way we make the rectification of the body, is through action, is through deeds. And so, not only should the body, but the emotions, and the mind, and everything, and the soul, and everything, all be united in worship of God. And so if we approach worship, we approach devotion, we approach mitzvos, without that physical, emotional, and mental excitement, so we are missing something in our worship. Again, we're not all expected to be perfect, and so we might not all make it right away. But it's something we have to work on. And we need diligence to do that. We need wisdom to do that. We can't just rest on our laurels. We have to constantly find things that excite us and use those things within the realm of halacha, within the realm of the laws of our faith, to be united, body and soul, in the worship of the Almighty. So, Azayu choser aguf shein loy guf shu kamoi kis v'narte kli neshama. So, the point is that if our worship is missing that aspect, if our devotion to God is missing the excitement and the emotional connection, it's like we're missing the body, and the body is like the container, the pocket, the sheath for the soul. Mizeh sheremez Rashi b'yoser tzorich lazares b'mokim sheyesh chesron kis, and that is what Rashi is hinting to when he says that we need more diligence in a place where there's missing the pocket. Not just the simple meaning that we all know of being careful about monetary loss, which is of course important, and that's one of the things. But the hint that's in there is that you need zrizas, you need diligence, which you can learn in Mesilas Yesharim. You learn about zrizas, you learn about diligence in the path of the just, the path of the upright, by the Ramchal, by Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato. But you go from there, and that is how you get the body to be excited about worship, and you fix that issue, and that's what it means. Tzav elaloshin zirus, that commanding and doing a mitzvah, doing a commandment, is a term of having an intense type of diligence, which brings enthusiasm, and that word enthusiasm has theos in it, means it brings God into us. That not only is it the soul separate from the body, but the body should be excited. The body can be excited even about things that are the opposite of the body, meaning the body and the emotions and everything. We can get excited about the abstinence aspect also. We can enjoy a fast physically, not just be walking around moping, but be exhilarated by it. Kind of get a sort of a high from the fast. It brings you into an altered state of consciousness through fasting. But and basically all of the different mitzvahs that we have, you put on tefillin, you put on a talis, you keep kosher, you do all these things, you keep the Sabbath. All of these things, when we do them with diligence, we bring all of the parts of our being into that worship of God and recognize God's unity. And so we need to make sure that we're not missing the body, not missing the pocket, the container for the soul. We can't only worship with the soul, we need to worship with the body and soul, because, and if we're lazy, we're not doing that, so that we need to have more diligence where there's something missing from the pocket, but you need diligence to overcome those who have a lazy form of worship. So the thing is, like we said before from the Chedush Yarim, afilu noitos nafshecha, and afilu noitos levavecha, that even if you're serving God without that, you still have to serve God. You still have to go through the motions, even when you're not excited. But that doesn't mean that there should be a goal of serving without being excited. It just means you still have to do it. You're still commanded to do it. You're still required to do it. But the way to overcome that, and sometimes that is by divine providence. Really, everything's by divine providence. So sometimes, the idea is that there is within that holiness of just doing something without necessarily being into it. You do your devotions, you pray 3 times a day, and the thing is, there's a certain sweetness in that. I remember, I think we told the story of, there was a rabbi who was visiting, shouldn't even mention his name, the first, one that's, whatever, Ben Gurion, and they shouldn't mention the name of such a wicked person, certainly not on my channel. I mentioned everybody else, I'm not going to mention Ben Gurion, right? I mentioned him. And so it was almost Shkia, so this rabbi updavened a very quick mincha, and this Dovidel, he said that you call it mincha. He said, not really, but if I do this 3 times a day every day, maybe once in my life, I'll daven a real mincha. And then that guy, the Apikoros, we should mention, he said, maybe it's worth it to daven 3 times a day if it means that one time you'll have an eretz to davening. Even he understood what that meant. Someone who was so far away from Torah mitzvahs and did such damage to the whole Klal Yisrael with his evil movement. So, but still, nonetheless, that's not such a lofty goal. Yes, sometimes we have to folgen, we have to just do what we're supposed to do, and daven a quick mincha because it's almost Shkia and we didn't daven mincha yet. And there's something very precious in that. And there's the other way too. You could get very arrogant and so forth if you're too religious in certain things. So you have to find the right balance. So anyway, with all that being said, let's try to still have zrizis and not have that chesron kiss, and be zoiche, especially now. It's the time of Pesach. We're cleaning for Pesach. There should be a lot of zrizis in this avodah of cleaning up. What that means. The Eibishter will help, and we should all be zoiche to everything, all the good blessings. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later. How do I turn this thing off?